and Series 214. So let's start off with the results from yesterday. The first game yesterday was Paraguay versus Japan. Honestly, that's about 120 minutes of my life I wish I had back. I wish I just saw the end. It was 0-0 through the whole regulation time, and then they had to go to 30 minutes of extra time. Scoreless there, too, so 120 minutes without a goal. It wasn't too exciting throughout the whole game, but then it went into the first penalty kick shootout of this World Cup, and that's where the intenseness and the drama started to come in.
And who won in the shootout?
It was Paraguay. They won 5-3. Japan's only miss came off the crossbar and skying up into the sky, so Paraguay made all of their penalty kicks, and they move on.
Wow. Now, why do we have these 0-0 ties? Actually, we haven't seen a whole lot of them during the World Cup. There have been a few, but especially when we get into the knockout stage, it seems like games like that, 0-0 or 1-1 ties, are much more common. Why is that?
Well, as you get deeper into the tournament, obviously the games become more and more important. So when you're playing such an important game at a huge stage like the World Cup, you want to play lots of defense. That's just how it is, because if you let in a goal, you're automatically, you don't have the advantage. The other team does. So if you let in that first goal, it's just crucial for the other team. And so it's all about defense in these later stages of the World Cup.
And that's why typically, especially in these later stages of the World Cup, we'll see a lot of low-scoring games, because once a team does score a goal, typically what that team will do that has scored the goal, they'll go back and start to really just play a lot of tough defense and not try to concede to the other team.
Right, they'll just score their goal, and they'll basically play keep away, try to have the ball as much as they can without giving it away.
Which, incidentally, we saw in the second game yesterday. So, just a quick recap here. Paraguay and Japan, a 0-0 tie, even through extra time. They go to penalty kicks. Paraguay wins in penalty kicks 5-3. They move on. Who's their next opponent?
It's going to be Spain. Spain and Portugal played, and Spain, as usual, they controlled most of the game with their great possession skills. David Villa scored a goal off of a rebound from his own shot. That was the only goal of the game. It was 1-0 in favor of Spain, so they will face Paraguay in the quarterfinals.
Very interesting. Should be an interesting matchup, although, as you mentioned at the very beginning of our World Cup reports, Patrick, you thought, and most people felt, that Spain was a favorite going into this World Cup. So yesterday they get away with a 1-0 win, and now they have to take on Paraguay. It seems like Spain has you don't want to say an easy way to the semis or maybe even into the finals, but it looks like they've kind of caught a break, doesn't it?
Right, not necessarily an easy way, but a favorable way. Let's put it that way.
I like that. All right, so those were the two results from yesterday. Now, we're actually not going to be having World Cup reports for about the next 5 or 6 days or so. So we've got some really big games coming up this weekend. Can you tell us about the big games coming up this weekend?
Right, there's no games on Wednesday or Thursday. So Friday, we've got the Netherlands versus Brazil. These are two of the strongest-looking teams in the tournament so far. Netherlands, 4 wins in 4 games. Brazil, undefeated. They had 1 tie. So both of these teams are really capable of scoring lots of goals. But like we mentioned earlier, there's going to be lots of defense played, so I don't think there will be a lot of goals. I think it's going to end up 1-1 after extra time, and I think it will go to a shootout, and I think Holland is going to win.
All right, well, we can only hope. That should be pretty much the game of the tournament. Germany also will be in action over the weekend?
Yes, Germany plays on Saturday. They will play Argentina. Now, Germany is very confident coming off their 4-1 thrashing of England, but Argentina is really, they're one of 2 teams along with the Netherlands to win all 4 of their games. So they're a very surprising team to me in that going into the World Cup, I expected them to be somewhat like Italy, kind of rusty because they're all mainly older guys. But they've really come out and surprised me, and they're looking like one of the strongest teams in the World Cup. I think Argentina will win this one very closely, 2-1.
Wow, that should be a great game. And what else have we got coming up over the weekend?
On Friday, there's also Uruguay versus Ghana. Now, Uruguay is playing very strong soccer. They're really looking like a very impressive team. Ghana, of course, the team who kicked out us, the USA. Ghana will definitely have the home crowd advantage in this game, as they always have, because they're an African nation. But Uruguay, I think in the end they're going to be too strong for Ghana. I think Uruguay will win 1-0.
I like Uruguay, too. Uruguay, again, looking like a very strong side in this tournament. And what else on the weekend?
On Saturday, there's also Spain versus Paraguay. And Spain come into this game as huge favorites. Like we mentioned, this is the favorable path for them. I think Paraguay, they're a strong team, but just not strong enough for Spain. I think that Spain's going to win 2-0.
All right, and we'll get a full report on the results when we come back on Tuesday, because this is the 4th of July weekend. Now, a couple of other interesting things. We talked about when England obviously scored a goal, but it was not counted. We talked about how FIFA had said that they're not really, they don't want to look at goal line technology. Well, apparently the president of FIFA has changed his mind about that.
Yes, Sepp Blatter has mentioned that he will revisit using goal line technology once the World Cup is over. And honestly, I think that's a great decision because, you know, when you consider all of these mistakes that have been made at the biggest stage of the biggest sporting event in the world, something has to happen. Something needs to be fixed, so it's the right thing to do.
I agree with that, and hopefully they actually will take that on. And then one other thing. Now, the refereeing, especially in the early rounds of the early games of this World Cup, really has been nothing shy of disastrous. And there have been a number of refs, I guess, who will not be invited to move on in the tournament.
Yes, actually, FIFA has dropped 10 referees from their lineup of referees. So because of some bad calls that they made, one of them is including Komen Koulibaly from Mali, the ref that disallowed the goal for the United States against Slovenia, which was clearly a goal, so he's out. Also, Italian referee Roberto Rossetti, who was the referee who disallowed Frank Lampard's goal for England that clearly crossed the line, he's out. And 8 other referees are out, so FIFA is definitely taking action when it comes to these bad refereeing calls.
Yeah, but you have to admit that Komen Koulibaly from Mali has a very poetic name, doesn't he?
Yes, Komen Koulibaly from Mali.
Now, his nickname is Sleepy Eyes, right?
Right.
Yeah, I think he's got no business moving on in the tournament. All right, well, looking for a great weekend. Thank you for your World Cup reports. Patrick Lloyd with us this morning. Remind our listeners once more where they can get all the action on satellite radio.
Sirius 214 and XM 236.
You are the man, pal. Thank you very much. All right, Patrick Lloyd with us this morning. By the way, later on this morning, we will have today's World Cup report on my website at GusLloyd.com as a YouTube video. Yesterday's report is right there on my website, GusLloyd.com. So if you'd like to listen to it again, maybe you have some friends or others who haven't been able to check in for the World Cup reports each and every day, watch my website, GusLloyd.com. Later this morning, we'll get that up there as a YouTube video, today's World Cup report with Patrick Lloyd. Stick around, more C's today. I am looking for some help with my summer reading list. That's next here on the Catholic Channel, XM 117 and Sirius 159.
Patience is the fruit of the Spirit. That's in the Bible. We didn't make that up. Stay tuned.